Africa's most beloved president right now, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader who has captured hearts and minds across the globe, just made a decision that's sending shockwaves through the international community. He expelled the UN's top official from Burkina Faso after a damning new report accused his government of horrific crimes: abusing children, recruiting them as soldiers, committing sexual violence, and targeting schools and hospitals. And he's telling the United Nations straight up, pack your bags, it's time to leave. Now here's where it gets complicated. Critics are sounding the alarm, calling this a dangerous red flag. A government silencing criticism, shutting out international watchdogs, and slamming the door on accountability. But supporters? They're calling it something completely different. A bold stand. An African nation refusing to bow down to outsiders, rejecting biased reports, and asserting true sovereignty. For Traoré and his people, when a government leading a massive revolution at home, rolling out groundbreaking changes, inspiring hope for an entire generation, gets accused of something this serious, it's not just criticism, it's warfare. Because narrative is power. And they've watched this movie before. Visionary African leaders discredited, undermined, even destroyed, not always by bullets, but by the stories told about them. And Traoré is not backing down from what he sees as a fight for truth and his country's future. So today we're breaking down the real reason Traoré is sending the UN packing. And we're asking the bigger question, is this the silencing of criticism, like critics claim? Or is it Africa finally standing up for itself? Let's break it down. But first, a big welcome to all our new subscribers and members. I'm so glad you're here with us. And if you're watching but haven't joined us yet, consider this your personal invitation. Here at Pan-African Genius TV, we're not just building a channel. We're creating a home for global Black stories, told with truth, intention, and power. If that speaks to you, and I hope it does, hit subscribe. But don't stop there. Tap the bell, drop a super thanks, or join our membership community and become part of what we're building. Your support helps us do what we do even better, and we appreciate it. Now let's get into it. Let's quickly recap what went down. On August 18th, Burkina Faso's government made it official. The UN's resident coordinator, Carol Flores Smergniak, and forgive me if I butchered that name, she is now persona non grata. In plain English, she's expelled. Why? It all traces back to a UN report titled Children and Armed Conflict in Burkina Faso. This report covered July 2022 to June 2024 and laid out shocking numbers: 2,283 grave violations against 2,255 children, kids recruited as child soldiers, cases of sexual violence, attacks on schools and hospitals. The report points fingers at both sides: extremist groups linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and local defense groups aligned with the state. And Traoré? He's not having it. They dismissed the findings as unfounded, claimed the UN didn't consult them, provided no evidence, and published a report that damages the country's image without context. So with one statement, they slammed the door and told the UN's top official, it's time to go. From Traoré's administration's point of view, this wasn't about silencing anyone. This was about sovereignty. They argue the UN dropped a damning report without proper consultation, without solid evidence, without considering the complexity of the fight they're in. To them, this isn't just numbers on a page. It's about image, credibility, and control. Remember, Burkina Faso has been battling jihadist groups that have torn through the Sahel for more than a decade. The government insists they're making progress, and reports like this undermine not just their authority, but their ability to rally support at home. Think about it. This is a government in the middle of a sweeping revolution. Traoré is building free healthcare systems, laying roads through community support, investing in food processing, pushing tech and innovation, trying to inspire hope where there was despair. And when the UN accuses them of grave child rights violations, they see it as outsiders meddling, outsiders who don't live the daily reality of villages under attack, schools under siege, or a state fighting for survival. For supporters, expelling the UN isn't suppression, it's self-defense. It's an African nation standing tall and saying, "We will not be lectured, we will not be humiliated, and we will not let foreign institutions dictate our story." To understand why Burkina Faso's leaders are taking this position and staying adamant about it, you have to look at the history. Because this isn't the first time African governments have accused Western institutions of undermining them through reports, sanctions, or narratives that don't tell the whole story. Think about it. For decades, international financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank dictated economic policy across Africa, policies that often collapsed local industries and left nations in debt traps. Yet those failures were blamed on African mismanagement, not on the strings attached to the loans. Or look at leaders who tried to push back. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Patrice Lumumba of Congo, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. Each in their own way challenged outside interference. And what happened? They were branded dangerous, destabilizing, or radical. Some were overthrown, others assassinated. So when Captain Traoré, who has promised to lead his country into a new era of sovereignty, says, "These UN reports are biased, these institutions don't see us as equals, and their words can weaken our legitimacy," they're drawing from very real history, a history where Western institutions often had the final word, and African leaders who resisted paid the price. That's why some in Burkina Faso see this expulsion not as defiance, but as correction, part of a larger movement of African nations saying we will tell our own story on our own terms. But let's flip the coin. Critics see this not as sovereignty, but as silencing, and they point to a pattern happening in Burkina Faso. Back in 2022, the government expelled another UN representative, Barbara Manzi, after she raised concerns about instability. To critics, it's the same playbook. Every time international organizations highlight uncomfortable truths, the government pushes them out. This time, it's Carol Flores Smirniak. She was appointed UN Resident Coordinator in Burkina Faso in 2024 and also serves as Humanitarian Coordinator for the United Nations in the country. Originally from Mauritius, she has more than 20 years of experience in development, security, and humanitarian work, serving in conflict and post-conflict settings across Africa and the Pacific. She's held senior roles in Côte d'Ivoire, Chad, Malawi, Papua New Guinea, and the UNDP Pacific Center in Fiji. Her credentials are extensive, but the Burkina Faso government argues they weren't consulted, that it relied on unfounded allegations and presented no real evidence. In their official statement, they said the report, quote, did not cite any documentation or court rulings to support the alleged cases of violations against the valiant Burkinabe fighters. That's the two sides of the coin. But no matter how you feel about his decision, here's the truth. Captain Traoré has the right to make whatever decision he feels is in the best interest of his country and his people. He is accountable to his people, not to any foreign institution. And let me just say this. If Donald Trump could expel a South African diplomat from the U.S. just for saying something he didn't like, then Traoré has every right to expel a UN official he feels undermines Burkina Faso. Sovereignty works both ways. But here's the nuance, my people. Whether the findings of this report are true or not, there might have been another path. Perhaps a more consultative approach. The UN could have first presented its findings directly to the government, giving them a chance to investigate, and allowing them to respond with facts before going public. But my people, here's the thing. This is bigger than one country. This is about Africa as a whole. Do we want Western institutions meddling in our affairs? Or do we want to build the capacity to solve our problems ourselves? Because here's what I don't understand. On one hand, Some African nations call on the United Nations or the West when crises break out, when elections go wrong, when peace deals collapse, when civil wars rage. They see those institutions as the only ones with teeth. But on the other hand, others are kicking those same institutions out, accusing them of bias, interference, and disrespect. We can't have it both ways, can we? We can't ask the UN to come rescue us in one breath and then slam the door on them in another. At some point, Africa has got to decide. What do we want as a continent? Where do we stand? So my people, where do we go from here? Africa's beloved leader has expelled the UN's top official. To some, it's suppression of criticism. To others, it's sovereignty in action. Both can be true at the same time. Or maybe they can't, depending on where you stand. But the question isn't really just about Traoré or the UN. It's about Africa. Are we going to keep relying on Western institutions to referee our disputes, monitor our elections, validate our governance? Or are we going to take that responsibility into our own hands? Even if that means standing alone when the spotlight turns harsh, that's the crossroads. Because every expulsion, every rejection, every call for intervention, it all adds up to one defining question. What kind of relationship does Africa want with the world? So now I turn it over to you, my people. Was Burkina Faso right to show the UN the door? Or was this a dangerous step that leaves vulnerable people without protection? And bigger than that, do you think Africa should keep calling on outside institutions? Or finally build the muscle to solve our own problems? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's have this conversation together. And if you enjoyed this video, please share it with your group chats. Don't forget to like, comment, comment, and subscribe to our channel. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sandra Babuking. Until next time, take care.